Hi everybody, Unison here. Today's little project, is what we're going to do is we're going to do a series of three-way switches. Three ways and four ways. I've done electrical for years and we get a lot of different questions, so we're going to try different scenarios of different ways of hooking up switches. What I have here basically is I've just made a little tail with a little cord end on it, and I've wired the switches accordingly. So as you can see, there's where the light comes on. But so what I basically wanted to start with is when you're doing any type of electrical wiring, the main part of the whole thing is there are two basic aspects of the electrical residential. They are a switch and a receptacle, whether that be a light, a motor, a fan, what have you, doesn't make any difference. That's the basic principle. Everything relies on the switch and relies on a continuous path of the power. The wire that is always is the connection of the path is the white one that is going to come back, and it's the one that always returns. The black one is the one that we can do a variety of combinations of switching to. So to give you an idea, the power comes in on this wire and it goes to these two black ones. The switch just breaks the path in between, and I have it wired continuously through all of these switches, and when I turn it on, it allows the current to go through the wire. Now, the big thing that we have is the type of wire. First of all, this wire over here is just your basic residential 14-2 gauge wire, and that is used for lighting, receptacles, and what have you. And then the wire that's in the middle here is a 14-3, and it is signified by the addition of the red wire. Now, in this case, is what I have done is we're going to add a bunch of different little scenarios here. But as you can see here, the red here has been disconnected in here because it's not being used right now, and it is also disconnected here. So is what we're basically doing at this point, I'll move these reds out, at this point, is we are technically just using the white through a series of junctions over to here, and then from there it goes on and it hooks on to the back part of that light. Now I can show you that there, it just basically looks like that. Okay, it's nothing too fancy. Right? So we're going to make a bunch of different connections here in a second here. But to get right to it, the switch I have here is a three-way switch. And the way you identify a three-way switch is that there is always two of one color and one of an opposite color. And there's always one on one side, two on the other. Now, the purpose of this being identified like this is that on this particular one, there's a black one, a black screw, and there's a combination of two brass screws. Now, when we bring our power in and we hook onto this, that's what happens is this switch has basically two junctions. I'm going to plug this for a second. Now, on a three-way switch, you have three different terminals. You have a black, a brass, and on the other side you also have a brass. Now, the way this switch works is this could technically be used as a single switch, because when the switch is turned in one direction, it makes a path between this terminal and this terminal. When the switch is turned the opposite way and you flip the switch, it now puts the power from this black one over here to the brass one on this side. Now in this case I'm not using it, and that is because I'm creating it as a single switch. So as what that means is one location. So if you're walking into a closet, for an example, this is what you would use, just to turn on the light switch. Now, a three-way switch is used in multiple locations in residential wiring. It can be from a bedroom to a living room, either end of a hall, upstairs, downstairs, all kinds of combinations. And the way we do this is we add another switch that has the exact same layout, which is this guy right here. And as you can see, we'll have the black, the brass, and the brass. And it's what we have to do here is that the way this is going to work is we are technically going to extend this black of this one circuit that comes on here, and we're going to extend it over to this one. So basically what we're going to do is interrupt this path. And I'm going to show you exactly how we do that. Now, we're going to use the red. Now remember, the white wire in this situation, the way the wiring is brought into this box, and we're carrying the power through. And when I mean that, we are carrying the white wire through. So in this instant, we want to take the white wire and tuck them out of the way. So it has nothing to do with the switching at this point. All we know is that it comes in from here, it goes straight through, joins, 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 and then heads to that light. And then from that, the black is joined, the black is joined, the black is joined, and now we're at this point. Now what we're going to do is we're going to interrupt that path. And what we're going to do out of this is we're going to take this one apart. And we're going to take this one apart. Now, the one that goes this way, it's not going to be needed at this point, so I'm going to tuck it off to the box. So now we have 3 wires at this box, 3 wires at this box. So now is what we have to look at is the fact that when I add this switch, I need the one that is not part of the pair. So they're always part of, so a good way to do that is to just take and twist off a pair like this. So you know that these are now called travelers. And on a traveler wire, it means that it does not go on to a common one, which is the black. They have to go either or on the brass ones, but they have to carry on. So now it's what happens when I flip the switch. One way, the black wires will be active, and when I switch the other way, the red wires will be active. But in reality, we are continuing a path through the light switches. Now, I'm just going to take a second here, and I'm going to put this wire here onto the common wire, to this black one, like this. And then we are going to take either one, doesn't make any difference which one goes where. Now this particular switch is made by Leviton. Not that I'm promoting any type of switch, it's just that they have these terminals on here. And there are certain ones that you can wrap screws around and do certain things. But for now, I'm just going to tuck them under the wire. That's why I've used this particular switch for this demonstration purposes. So I have the wire that goes that way, and now I have to get the red wire that is going to hook onto the back of this one. Get under the terminal here. Like this. And now we're going to take off this wire, and we're going to put it back onto this switch. Now this is just the basic understanding of a 3-way switch for those that are having difficulty with it. I know there's always questions about it, and the thing is what really messes people up is if you have the travelers wrong. And the only way to get a traveler wrong is to mistaken the difference between a traveler and the comet. Now I'm going to plug this back in first. So now the light comes on. So basically, if this was in a hallway and we were walking down the hallway, we are turning the light on. We can also turn it off at that point too. So we walk down to the hallway to a bathroom or to a bedroom, and at the other end of the switch, if we're going to bed for the evening, we basically can turn off the lights from there. Now, as what has happened on this one is that if we brought power into the black and it's following this black path, is what we have done at this switch is we have broken that black path, and now the power is coming into the red path, right? Now, because it's off, this one here hasn't been completed, so there's no way that the current can carry through. So we can turn this switch on again, which now is going to activate the black one. Or if I break this one, now I've got power that comes into the red one. Now, because this switch is off, this red one is not hooked up. If I turn the switch down on this end, now it is. Now, it doesn't matter which way they go. You can flip them 1,000 times. It doesn't make any difference. But the whole point of the thing is the one that comes in is the one that has to be the one that is continuous to the light fixture. Doesn't matter if these red ones or the black ones on the brass ones, but it makes a big difference if the one of these have turned the opposite way, because then the switch will only work one location. And I have that a lot of times. People say, oh, I can only turn it on from down the other end and I have to go there to turn it off. Well, that's why, because you've mixed up the common with the traveling. Now, that particular situation there is how we would do a three-way. Now, three-way does not mean three locations. It means three positions on a switch. People call them two-ways. People call them whatever, but it's two locations, three connections is what that means. Now, the next connection that we're going to do is going to be a four-way. Now, a four-way is one of these particular switches, and they have 4 screws, 2 brass, 2 blacks. Now, the combination of this one gets a little more confusing, because on this one, all we are trying to do is changing the connections of these traveling wires, not the common wires. And this is where people make the mistake on a four-way. They can never have a common one on this. This is only to switch travelers. So, in other words, the blacks will go one combination, and so will the brasses. And then when the switch is turned the other way, it makes a conjunction. It turns like this way and this way. So these ones actually come active. So this is the difference. So we have our power unplugged. So what we're going to do now is we're going to pretend, and this is an example of maybe if you had another door, like for a foyer, for an example. If you had, you walk into your house and you turn the light inside the door, and you have another door that is over towards an attached garage, and then you walk up the stairs or down the stairs or into another room, you can shut it off from a kitchen or a living room or what have you. That's what the next one is. Now I'm going to remove the three-way out of this. So I'm going to take the three-way now and I'm going to move it over to here. Now, the purpose of this, again, is we have to make sure that our white still remains continuous, continuing this path on. And now we're going to break this one off, and we have to make sure that the black one that is heading over this way is the one that's going to be the common wire. So now is what we have, is we're going to get this wire out, and we're going to take this one, and we're not going to need this one for a second. Okay, so we're going to tuck it in the back of the box. So now if you look at, we have 3 wires, 3 wires, 3 wires. Well, now we need the 4th wire. So this is where we'll bring up the other ones. So in other words, is what we have done is we have a 14-3 wire that comes into this point. We've made the break. We have the 14-3 that comes in this point. So if we would just junction this wire from here, for an example, and junction this wire from here, this could technically just be thrown into a junction box if this is now different. It's just an extension of this is all we're going to do. So we're going to hook this back up the way we had it. So now we need the black common on this one, like this. And then we can have our travelers accordingly. All right, and just for the sake of this, I'm just going to do it like this. And we're going to have it back on the opposite side. So now all I've basically done is, because I finished the connection, is I can plug this back in again. And as I plug this in, I now have my 3-way switches, but just in a different spot. Okay? That's where we are at this point. So now what we've got to do is make this a 4-way. So now we can say, for an example, this is the front door of the house. This could be the garage door, and this one could be the one at the top of the stairs. So the way we do that is now we have to break these. So we have to have our path that is going to be continuous. So we open this up, and when we install it, a 4-way switch, we want to do it on pairs. And the simplest way for me to explain this, without getting into too much mess up with the travelers, is you want to get your pairs, the red and the black on one side, red and the black on the other. And it's what you want to do is take your pair, and the pairs have to be on the same color. Whether it's brass or black, it doesn't matter, but the pairs have to match. So we're going to come over here and install the black onto here, like this. And then we're going to install the other path of the red onto this. So now we have our pair of wires on one side of the blacks. And now we can take the same color coordination and move them over to this one. So what I'm going to do is just put the black into this one, like so. And we're going to take the red one, like so. And now we have our four-way switch. So now, when I hook this back up, we can have our switch from here. We can have our switch from here. We can have our switch from here. We can turn this one back off. We could turn this one back on. We could turn this one back off. We can turn this one back on. We can just play multiples as long as the whole point is that our common wires, see, we're only switching the traveler. So in this box, basically what we had as the common wire is gone. All we have now is a set of travelers and a neutral that's in the back. So this is how we've interrupted this. So we can have multiple locations. But now we're going to add even another one. And this could also be the same type of scenario. So if you had, this would be used more as, for an example, if you had outdoor light fixtures. If you had an outdoor, and say you had it from a patio door up in a kitchen, which this could be a patio. We have it at the back door of the entrance door that we've walked in on. We could also have this inside the garage door coming into the house. And if you have a man door on the opposite side of the garage, so if you're walking out there and walking around to the front of your house, we could have the fourth switch. And this is how we do it. And it's the same principle. All we're going to do now is we're going to take this out and we're going to break this one out. And we break up this one. You'll notice that because the three ways are missing, or the three wire is at the end of the three wire, there is only three wires remaining in the box. So what we do at this point now is we take out this switch, undo this one, and we're going to take the three-way out, and we are going to put it directly to the end. So now we have our black one, which is on the 14-2, and we have our pair, which is the red and the black. So we're going to move this to the common, and this is the most important thing, is that the commons have to be, at this point, from the finish and the start. The power comes in, the power goes continuously to the light. If this was all gone, this black one could hook right onto this black wire and the light would come on. It's the same principle. So now we're going to do the same thing again. We are just going to hook up our black. And we're going to twist over here. We're going to hook up our red. And if we look in the bottom of the box now, there's our fourth wire. So we have visualized this. We have the power coming in. We have two travelers that carry through the wire with the white because we have to have it continuous. We have a pair of wires on this side, which is the red and the black. We've broken the wire. And now we have to continue that on, which is these two here, this pair and this pair. That's these two wires, like this. And then that, of course, would break and go into this one. And then it continues on. So if we had all of these moretted off, it's the same idea that we have the three wires and the three wires. You just have to visualize for a second of what this would look like if this wasn't even here. Just pretend. So basically we're just cutting in, we're breaking up the travelers to hook onto the four ways. Now, here again is the four-way. You can always tell again by the four screws. We have two blacks, two colors. There again is what we want to do is we want to take our pair. And in this case, we're going to put the same situation. We're just going to go off to the side of this one. We're going to take our red wire, which is the other half of that one. And we're going to hook it up like that. And then we're going to take our other pair of wires and we're going to hook it same color wise. We're just going to go the blacks on the tops. And we'll get our brass screws down here in the bottom. Okay, so now at this point, we have, I'll move our thing down a little bit. We have a three-way, which would be at a patio door, for an example. We have a four-way, which is going to be at our main man door, our main entrance door. We have at the garage, if we want to turn the lights on from inside the garage, for an example, from there, or another door, and then we could have this at the man door. So we have 4 switches that are now added onto the same circuit. And we could add 10 switches if it was the case, but at this point we have to go from the start of the three-way to the end, and we can have as many 4-way switches as we want. And it doesn't matter which way we play with these switches. We can play with this one, to this one, to this one, to this one, to this. It makes no difference because we have completed our path with our common coming in and our common being broke, and then continuing on the black screws all the way through. And that is the most important thing. If the black one was switched over here, these two would have to alternate to get them to work properly. And this is where people make the mistake. So it doesn't matter how many switches we add, it just matters the correct direction of what we've done. Now, that's what we want to do is for those that are a little more advanced in the wire, and we're going to get a little more technical here. And I'm going to show you that it doesn't have to be wired specifically to this path. Whether we have this following, however, we have it wired that we had to have the wire in this circuit and we had to have this over to here. I'm going to show you that we can add this no matter where we want to add it. And this is going to be the interesting part. I'm going to take this thing all apart and I'm going to show you how we can make this even different again. So now, if I was the person wiring this and I couldn't get to that particular path, right, I'm going to take this out. I'm going to add it. Well, why don't we add it into one of these? Let's add it into this switch. So now we're going to get a little more confusing. So now we're going to add this circuit into here. And I'm teaching you this is because this is how we're going to change colors of the travelers. And this is where people can get messed up on. I just got to get all these wires to come through here. Of course they have to be difficult. Why would they not be? Like that. Now we're going to push this through. And because I don't have all of the screws in here, I got my ground wires in the bottom of the box. I'm just going to hook one on into here, like this with a rat, so I have a path in here. Like so. I'll shove that one in there, and have that one on into there like that. Like that. Now, we're going to get a little more confusing, because we're going to keep our circuit hooked up the same way. But now we have the common and we have the neutral in this box, not this box. So now we're going to get a little more confusing. So now we've learned from the start that we had our neutral that went straight through to this one, and continued on to the light switch. So we have to make sure that is the first path that is complete. So we know that this pair goes this way, this pair goes this way. So we have to make sure that we get our neutral wire hooked back on to this one. Okay, so now we know that we have our neutral path completed, right? But now if we look, we have black ones, red ones still attached. And here we have the power here, and I have a white one that comes over from this box. So I have my pairs hooked up. So now is what we have to do is, like we said before, it doesn't matter where the start is or where the finish is. that they still have to go to the three-way, right? So now is what we're going to do then, is we're going to find the path that goes over there, and it's this one. And is what we're going to do is take this, and we're going to put these to the common. So now we have our common, but our common doesn't continue on that way, it continues over to this one. So if we wired it like this, we would have our first mistake because we don't have our common wire onto the black one. So we're going to hook this up again like this, so we have to get back on our common wire. Like this. So now we don't have our other black in here, we're left with this white one. So basically it's what you would want to do if it was confusing to people, is we would want to take some black tape and tape this so we know that it is going to be a live wire, not a hot, because it is in a switch. So we can still attach this to the switch, because when it comes to switching, you can still have a white wire on a switch. Right? It's just not a general practice for people that are not familiar with different types of wires. So now we have our wire hooked back the same way. So now we're going to use this one as the common. Okay, so as what I've done now at this point is I'm going to move this over to here, plug it back in. So now is what I've done is I have the path that comes in on the black, but now the black moves over to this one. So it's the start of the three-way, so it's the exact same wire, but instead of the black being a traveler, it's the white one. So as you can see, now the pairs are interrupted as far as the reds are still continuous, but this is a white one, and this is a black one. It is the same concept, and it would not make any difference whether it was in this box, this box, this box, as long as you have to just make that connection that the first one is going to be the white wire, the continuous wire, and then the next one is going to be the common. And it doesn't matter which box it is, as long as you make that path back to the common. So for an example, if it was over here, we would have two whites, right? We would have like, the white combinations, and the black ones would be the common wires carrying on. Now, as you can see, this wire has come off, and it still is not working. And the only reason they're still working, and the only reason it is still working, is because the switch is not turned in the other location. So now if it's over here, it shuts it off, but if it's turned back on any one of them, it completes that path again. So this little wiring's little type of thing, what we've done for the day, just gives you a basically idea of how all of the wiring is basically done. This is just our simple little project. If you have any questions, you can just leave a comment below, and that's our basic three-way and four-way switching. So I'm glad you joined me, took the time to enjoy this today. And like I said, if there's any questions, please feel free to contact me. Thank you.